Excellent. Okay. All right. So we do have a quorum, and judging on what's on our agenda, perhaps this can be a fairly quick meeting. So let me call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Today is Tuesday, July 16, 2024. It is now 5:06 p.m. We have members participating both in person and Zoom. In person, I have Board of Finance member Lorene Pesky, Wendy Traub, Jim Wright, and participating via Zoom is Chris Bayes. So before we begin the meeting, could we stand and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll jump into item number 1. I'll entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Second. And second by Ms. Pesky. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And we have one member of the public, AKA Board of Ed. Anything this evening? Nothing? Okay. We'll move into item 2, and I'm going to take this like the council did last night because we have a few that are on the same evening. So 2A, I'll entertain a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of May 21st, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Traub,
Second.
and second by Mr. Wright. Questions or comments on the minutes?
I have one comment. I don't know if we can change under my comments, Mrs. Traub. Seriousness of not paying health insurance premiums, they will cancel if not paid. I was speaking in terms of private businesses. So would it be, in my comment, I was talking about private businesses. If you don't pay your health insurance, it's on, I'm sorry, second page under Mrs. Traub asked.
Got it. All right.
It says, seriousness of not paying health insurance premiums, they will cancel if not paid. I was speaking in regards to private businesses. And I don't want them to misconstrue that as me saying that the city would cancel health insurance.
Right.
If it was not paid.
So then you're proposing a correction
Yes.
that, for clarification, that private insurance.
In private businesses, if you don't pay your health insurance premiums, they will cancel if not paid. Correct.
Okay. So the motion to approve was made by Ms. Traub, seconded by Mr. Wright. Would you amend your motion to reflect the amendment to that sentence?
I will do so.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, you're
Yeah.
okay to amend your second? All right. Other questions or comments before we move this? Hearing none. I'll call it all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so I'm going to do the next two as one motion. I'll entertain a motion to accept the special joint budget meeting minutes with the City Council, May 28, 24, and to accept the public hearing meeting minutes from May 28, 2024. That would
So
be-
moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pesky.
Second.
And second by Mr. Wright. Are there questions or comments on these? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 2D, I'll entertain a motion to accept the special budget adoption meeting minutes of June 4th, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Second by Mr. Wright. Questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
On that June 4th meeting, Mr. Bayes started out being at the meeting and then he wasn't, and votes came up and he
Did not
wasn't
vote.
absent and he didn't vote. Does it have to be considered in some way?
Do you want to table these and allow those amendments to take place? Okay.
I'm fine with
So the question is to the two individuals that made the motion. So the motion would be to approve the special budget adoption meeting minutes with corrections to reflect board member Chris Bass's absence in the vote.
Sure.
We're good?
Yes.
All right. Then any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E, 2E, excuse me. I'll entertain a motion to accept the special joint meeting minutes with the City Council, June 17, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Trapp and Mr. Wright. And are there questions on these minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 2F, I'll entertain a motion to accept the special joint meeting minutes with the City Council from June 21st, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you. I heard Mr. Wright and I heard a second from Mr. Bayes. Questions or comments on these minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the budget transfer request for fiscal year 23-24 as further described in the Manager of Budget's letter dated June 29, 2024. It says pending City Council, but actually the council did approve these last night, so that would be July 15th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Trapp,
Second.
and second by Mr. Wright. And are there any questions?
I have a quick question. Is it possible, only because I'm not familiar with any of these accounts, that the transfer in, transfer out account names would be listed? Because unfortunately, some of these I know where they're coming from going, but the first two, I don't know what accounts they're coming from and going to.
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, we can do that for the next one.
Can you quickly just
Sure.
let us know right now, just so I know what I'm about?
So the 2 million that was coming from the internal service fund that was voted on when the fiscal year 24 budget was
Okay.
adopted. And that went into the general fund revenue.
Okay.
The next one, the 1.4 million, that was from the bonded funds. And that went into, again, the general fund revenue that was voted on when the fiscal year 24 budget was adopted
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. Where did it come from?
from the bonded funds.
Bonding funds, thank
Yep.
you.
And then the reevaluation that comes from the assessor's office and goes into the sinking fund. OPEB funding, same thing. That money was a budgeted line item to then get moved into the OPEB funding account. The contribution from the bus, that comes from the senior center and goes into their, I believe it's part of their contribution in another, I think it's a grant account. I'm not quite sure that one. But I can get you the exact account of what that one is for.
Okay.
And then the evictions, same thing, that just goes into another sinking fund.
And that one is budgeted in boards and agencies.
Yeah, I found the last three I knew where they came from because those are in our regular standard.
Yeah.
But all the ones that are not in our standard general fund are the ones that I need to learn. So thank you.
Sure, we can update that for the next one.
All right, and because I did have an inquiry from one of the co-chairs of the Board of Education regarding the first transfer, the $2 million, I did send an email to them clarifying that that is actually the transfer that was approved and adopted in June of 2023. And this is the paper trail for the auditors that documents the transfer.
It's part of the
Budget,
That's
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Other questions or comments before I call the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So item 4, I needed a motion to accept the performance reports for the City of Torrington.
So moved.
Ms. Pesky,
Second.
and second by Ms. Traub. Questions or comments?
I have a general overall question because we're at our year end and I don't know this. Maybe Chris Anderson might have known this. When we do encumbrances during the year, is there a specific process we need to go through at year end per gap with encumbrances? Do they have to be closed out? How does that work? Because I know we have some in June on both sides, Board of Ed and City. Is there a timeline for those? And also, do those encumbrances have to be for that fiscal year's services or whatever they do?
Yes, so those encumbrances have to be for that fiscal year. And there is a timeline. We do leave them open, you know, a few weeks past, probably about a month past. And then that's just because your invoices are coming in still, you're still paying off of those. And then they'll do a soft close process. They'll look at what's open still. Do we plan on receiving those services, those items? If we don't, then we close them out. But if we do, then we wait for the invoice, we do a soft close. If there's something that, you know, is on back order and we know it's on back order, we're expecting it to come in a couple months later after the soft close, those funds get dumped into the prior year reserve, and then we can pay off of that.
So during the year, they would get transferred over to accounts payable when they actually were due, correct?
Right.
But at the year end, there's a different process. The only reason I asked that is that, you know, I noticed, you know, some of them on the city side, but also specifically one of them on the Board of Ed side was for snow plowing for $50,000. And I thought that was odd to see that in June being encumbered because we wouldn't be using the services of snow plowing in June. So again, I don't know if this is, you know, gap recording. And obviously, you know, I'll say this, my concern is that the month before, there was quite a bit of money in the Board of Ed. And then in June, all of a sudden, the entire surplus goes away down to, I don't know, 150 something thousand. But there's huge encumbrances in June now, all over the place. So are those things that would be addressed through the audit process in the future?
I would think that they would be addressed in the audit. I mean, if you're expensing something out of fiscal year 24, that's really for fiscal year 25. That's kind of a no-no.
Yeah, and you know, I'm trying not to get too in the woods with it, but there was another one for, I don't know, 600 and some odd thousand that showed up as an encumbrance. And I thought that was odd at the end of June to have over $500,000 encumbered into licensing and warranty contracts when their entire budget for the next year, this 2025 year coming up, is 500 and some odd thousand. So I'm wondering why they would encumber 600,000 at the end of the year, which I believe brings them over quite significantly too. So a couple questions I have on those encumbrances. And I was wondering on the city side, the same thing. If all of a sudden something shows up in their building maintenance in June, is that because they're planning on doing something in the next few weeks, I guess is the question. If it hasn't been done by June,
Right.
but it's being encumbered, it's a gray area for me. I get confused.
Usually you would expect it to be completed by June 30th.
I mean, if it's in process, I suppose if they're doing a
Right.
project in process, then it would not be closed out yet.
Right.
Okay.
But to say, you know, we're gonna fix this toilet in this bathroom on June 29th, when you've known that toilet was broken and, you know, it's not gonna be fixed until August.
Well, and
That's
clearly,
really
I
a
know that there's some
25.
things that happen, you know, that perhaps once the commitment is made, it becomes encumbered.
Mhm.
And
Right.
we don't always encumber everything. I mean, we don't have line items of encumbrances every month, but I understand why they do it for budgeting purposes. But at the point at year end, as you just said, it should be moving to the point of an accounts payable and being taken care of. And I realize there's a lapse, right? At the end of June, there's always a lapse between something getting finished and finalized and billed, but that lapse shouldn't be 3 or 4 months, right? I mean, if it's not being done in this fiscal year, I would assume that money would go back in the general fund if it's not completed, correct? Or services, like any kind of services. I'm trying to think of any kind of services. If you're
Right.
not getting those services by the end of June, isn't that technically the next year's budget then?
Yes, I mean, if you haven't started the project, yes.
Okay.
Especially things, you know, with licenses and warranties and software like that. Usually those follow your fiscal year.
They do. And that was
Mhm.
another question. I don't know how those things are billed out. Okay. All right. Thank you.
But certainly to your point, when you talk about line item 5530.05, where there's an encumbrance that occurred for $615,672, resulting in a $643,000 overdraw in
Correct.
that line item.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably should be communicating back to the Board of Education that we need some clarification as to what that is. And I did have a meeting with the superintendent earlier today. We did talk very briefly about being very careful not to encumber revenue or expenses that are budgeted for fiscal year 24 into fiscal year 25, because the auditor, it's a hard break on June 30th. I mean, all of us that have been on the Board of Education know that June 30th is your break. Certainly if you order, a crate full of books and you put that order in the beginning of May and the books don't come in until July 2nd, but you've encumbered the funds for those books, understandable. They were ordered in the right fiscal year. The intention was to pay for them in that fiscal year. And if they show up, and I want to say it's a 90-day period that the auditors will allow lag time for billing or for collections. But it must be reflective of when it was incurred versus when it's received.
Well,
After
Ms.
90 days, it becomes deferred. It's a deferred revenue. Expenses, you're just done. You can't defer those expenses. But we can certainly ask the Board of Education to come to the next Board of Finance meeting and maybe ask them a few more questions.
Okay.
Specifically, my conversation earlier today was on line item 5210, where you see the current month's transaction of $273,585.43. That expenditure was actually a check drawn on that account and moved into a Board of Education non-lapsing insurance fund. The auditors boards of education can't have non-lapsing accounts. So I did ask the superintendent about that. That's income or revenue that was earned in fiscal year 24. I did also reach out to the State Department of Education for clarification on the amended section 10-248A that allows boards of education to transfer their year-end surpluses into non-lapsing accounts for educational purposes. This is insurance. I'm not sure if it qualifies under education. So I'm looking for clarification on that. And we will also reach out to the auditors to understand how an expense line item can be, a check can be issued to it and set up into a separate account. So,
But to follow up on that, I think even line item 5650, which is instructional tech supplies, 171,000 was encumbered, which makes them 170,000 over budget on that item. So I guess my concern is if they have an excess at the end of the year, they have the ability to request that it goes into, a fund. So I just want to be concerned that we're not just spending at the end of the year just so that you're spending down a surplus. That's all. And I'm addressing, city side too, because there were encumbrances on the city side too. And I appreciate again, I'm asking for GAAP. I'm asking for what governmental accounting says we're supposed to do with encumbrances. So thank you.
all right. Other questions on the performance reports? It says for the city, and it feels like we discussed
I know,
most of
I
the Board of
posted.
Education, but so I'm going to call the motion on the acceptance of the performance reports for the city. Unless there are any other questions, last call for questions. None. I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5, I'll entertain a motion to accept the Board of Education's budget performance reports.
So moved?
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Is there a
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bayes. And questions or comments?
Well,
Here.
we're
Yeah.
just accepting them.
Just accepting
So-
them, not approving them. Yeah. And I'll reach out to the superintendent. I know his business director was not available today for our meeting, so I'll reach out and see if perhaps they can attend next month's meeting, and we can go over these. I was also anticipating next month we would see if we can get our auditors to come in and report out on the audit. So it would make sense that there would be this meeting with the Board of Education present. All right. If there are no questions, I'll call this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did somebody
The motion was made by Ms. Traub, seconded by
Okay.
Mr. Bayes.
for Board of Ed?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll call it one more time. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Item 6, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Second.
And second by Ms. Straub. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anything else from budget management?
Don't really have much. As you know, fiscal year 25 budget has been adopted, so now we're working in 2 fiscal years, which is always a good time. But no, everything is, I think, going pretty smoothly, so.
Thank you. Anything from the city clerk's office? No. All right, moving into item 7, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by mayor and members.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Pesky. And second by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Wright, anything this evening?
Not today, thank you.
Okay. Mr.
Nope.
Ms. Pesky.
I'm glad you mentioned the auditors, given that we received the 2023 audit and the financial statements. Could that be next month?
Yes, we'll reach out to Leslie Zoll from CLA and get her lined up for the presentation.
And in light of the fact that we're just getting 2023
Yes.
and we went all the way through 2024, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we rectified some of the issues that were mentioned in the financial statements and in the audit so that they won't appear again, even though we hadn't received the audit yet. But knowing that, it was mentioned in both that, high turnover in the fiscal office and the turnover in the fiscal office continues. So I'm just hoping that will be okay for 2024.
Absolutely. And 2 of the items in fiscal year 22 and then also appeared in fiscal year 23. Those 2 in particular were with regard to procurement. There was a policy that procurement wasn't being done in accordance with federal CFR. Can't remember the number. So fiscal year 22, we didn't get until August of fiscal year 23. So yes, a policy was adopted and enacted, but unfortunately it wasn't enacted until after August of 2023. So yes, that was a repeat. We did have a conversation with the auditors about that. They understood it, but they said they still had to write it in there. Absolutely. The other one was about the internal controls. If the comptroller is preparing a report, particularly let's talk about the ARPA grant reports, and you go into the portal, it's all done online now, gone are the days where a report was done. The comptroller could give it to deputy comptroller to review. There was a review process and then it was filed either electronically or mailed. Now you go on a portal and you're filling this out and you're automatically hitting send without that review. And that's what came to light in fiscal year 22. We became aware of it after the audit was presented. The policy was changed. Those internal controls were implemented. So yes, those 2 in particular processes have been cleaned up with policy and practice. I think that we've been pretty careful about making sure that there is a written policy and that we're actually finding a way for everybody to sign off and document that they did the review before it was sent. The other things in the report, I think that we'll let Leslie Zoll discuss some of it because much of it is about how the city and the Board of Education interact on year-end closeouts. And I think they actually did specifically state, you know, that there should be a closer working relationship in those closeouts. But I'll let Leslie elaborate on all of those. Because the Board of Education does have a lot of grants that they can do those journal entries, and they're, you know, they're doing them at the year end, and it isn't until the auditor comes in and starts looking at them that they're looking for those answers. And because we are one organization, they're asking the questions to our financial offices, but the answers are actually coming from the Board of Education. So they're looking for a different working dynamic to make sure that those answers come to the city before they're asked by the auditor.
All the more reason for shared services.
Oh, my goodness. Honestly. Although now that we're looking at the physical office space, I think I can understand why there was a little reluctance, you know, how do you put all those bodies in one location? Yeah. I agree with you. Those are the things that, you know, that provide really good opportunity to have those conversations. So excellent points. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad you read that audit already. So yeah, we'll get Leslie out here for the August meeting.
And speaking of the ARPA funds, we're heading towards December.
Correct.
Could we have an update as to where we are with those? I did see with the Women's Business Development Fund out again, beating the bushes to try and spend that money, but, or get businesses
Yes.
to apply for that money so that they could help them. But clearly it's not going the way that the committee had hoped it would.
It's
That
well
was,
said.
that was a real,
Leap of faith.
yeah. But it was business. You know, it was one of the things that we were really striving to stimulate local businesses.
Right.
And I don't know if businesses are kind of hands off
There.
in terms of getting involved with anything federal or knowing that it's not that there were strings attached to this, because it wasn't that there were strings, but there are reporting requirements that most private businesses, you know, not-for-profits, they're more used to that, but private businesses don't have that comfort level with those. And so I can understand it, but it's a real shame.
It is, yeah. So the latest report on particularly that grant, which was $350,000, the contract, I believe, goes through August. I know there are 4 new applications from businesses, and you're absolutely right. Torrington businesses are reluctant to take advantage of those grant opportunities, whether they don't trust government, they don't want to do the reporting as you suggested, or many times in some solicitation, they just said, you know, we're not interested. We just want to be left alone. So it is a great opportunity. I have an internal ARPA, those are the department head meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks so that we can assess what's left in the grants that were awarded either through the community impact grants, WBDC, or some of those other grant allocations like the radio tower that hasn't happened yet. And how do we, with the next 4 months, pivot so that we're committing those funds before December 31st, 2024 and spending them before December 31st, 2026. So we will bring that back. I think it's a good time to reassess, and any reallocation of those funds would have to go to the city council for approval anyways. So we'll make sure that we bring those reports back.
Is it 26 or 25? Because we have to have it designate or encumbered by this December, and then have
Spent
it
25.
finished up by 25,
Um,
perhaps. Because that would be give you 2 years to do that. And I don't think it was, I don't, quote me on that.
I'll get the answer. I was thinking it was 2026. Our intention was to complete it by 2025 regardless. For a lot of reasons, there's an audit once we do all of this. So I certainly wouldn't want in that audit period to find out we've done something incorrectly and now we're doubling back or
And
trying to
the
answer.
further away that you get from the actual, I mean, we are on the committee, we had talked about having, people come and, like have a little fair. That's
Yes.
people that received the money and what did they do, and the kids that got to do. Well, it's just, people are almost don't want to hear about it anymore. There's, because it's associated with the pandemic. And if we don't talk about it, maybe, it won't ever happen again. But
Yeah, it is 2026.
26.
Yeah, so December 31st, 2026 to fully expend their funds.
Oh, okay.
But I do believe in all of our ARPA committee meetings, we were saying December 31st, 2025.
I knew.
We wanted to make sure that we were, just as the auditors, have highlighted, you want to make sure that you're crossing Ts, dotting Is, and we have a whole year to fix it if we haven't. So, and I'm sorry, Mr. Bayes is still on the call, and thank you very much for pulling off the side of the highway to join us. Do you have anything this evening?
Nothing this evening, Mayor, thanks.
Okay, all right. Well, then, the only thing I'm going to add is for the Board of Finance members, an update. You have met John Monks a few times over the last 6 or 7 months. Mr. Monks was, certainly very helpful in helping us reorganize the financial department. As a comptroller who's responsible for everything from audit completion to filling any staff vacancies, I can say he did a fine job with those areas that he was instrumental in accomplishing. He came from the consulting world, and after going through a budget and an audit, I think he came to the conclusion that consulting world was really where his expertise lay. So he did submit his resignation. We have been so fortunate between Olivia DeRosa, who was our deputy comptroller since January, and Erica, who's been our manager of budgets. We found our succession plan works, and Olivia has accepted the comptroller's position effective immediately. We're working with Erica on a transition to move into that second in command, but maintaining the management of budgets. And we've posted a assistant director of finance position that's been posted right now. They continue to work at how to strengthen the financial team, particularly because it does require a lot of communication with the Board of Education's finance offices. So there'll be more changes in that department as we fill in some of those vacancies. And I'm really quite pleased with the leadership that has emerged over the last 6 months. Alice Prue does continue to come in on a weekly basis. Is she now only once a week? She's still twice a week. And our retired payroll clerk, Nancy Mishna, has also been coming in to help with transition and training. So we truly are very fortunate in that sense. And with a new budget cycle, we're hoping to just build on that strength. So if you have no questions regarding those changes and there being no further business before the board, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Second.
And second by Mr. Bayes. And all in favor?
Hi.
Bye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Tell them vote on something.
So what have you posted for?
Assistant Director of Finance. So
Carl
and we're
Belgrade.
changing the titles.
So she's going to be,
Yeah.
We're we're eliminating the deputy comptroller.
oh, okay.
So it's going to be the comptroller because our charter calls it a comptroller. I can't change that title.